Welcome back. Adversity is something any athlete, or for that matter, any person, will face at some point in their lives. Ryan Leaf was a collegiate superstar at Washington State back in the late 1990s, a finalist for the Heisman Trophy that some thought was destined for NFL stardom. But he struggled on the field after getting drafted by the San Diego Chargers in 1998. And after that, life spiraled downhill after numerous arrests and an addiction to painkillers. But Leaf has turned his life around and is now helping others overcome those addictions. Brian Shawn had a chance to sit down with him to chat in Fargo.
All right, Kelly, thank you so much. Joined here by Ryan Leaf, the 1998 second overall pick in the NFL draft, and is now going around the country and started a foundation helping a lot of folks that are trying to overcome addiction, Ryan. I know that's something you're very passionate about because you went through that. What's that experience been like for you to essentially help people that were in your shoes that are trying to get help and overcome some very dangerous things, whether it be mental health, illness, or addiction?
Well, it was the foundation of what had to change in my life when I got out of prison. I'd never really been of service to anybody, I don't think, in my life. So to set that as the foundation was the good starting point, and you build off that and build off that, and things like this continue to build those bricks, brick by brick.
And you come to a place like Fargo and speaking to folks like felons that are trying to get their lives back on track. How rewarding is that for you? Because I'm sure people look at you and say, I can do that. And it gives them a little bit of hope.
Well, you hope that's the case. A lot of times you have to go into a prison setting or into a group of felons and disarm them in a way because they immediately look at me like I'm not the same as them, that I was famous or I had money and it was easy for me when I got out, and I have to immediately tell them that no, it wasn't. I walked out of a prison cell, mom and dad picked me up. I didn't have 2 pennies to rub together. I was on their couch for 3 months. I wasn't a prospect. I was there weren't girls lined up to date me or anything like that. I was a convicted felon, drug addict with a credit score of 520, so it wasn't the most appealing for anybody, and it's important to relate to these individuals because we're exactly the same. We're in exactly the same place, regardless of if I played professional football or not.
Let's go back a little bit, Ryan. I know you had talked about the trials and tribulations of going to the NFL and not being ready for some of the stuff off the field, all the pressure that comes off the field a little bit. You got addicted to Vicodin, I think was the painkiller that eventually that kind of took you over. But then you said going to jail was actually the best thing that happened to you. Why is that? Well,
for me, I had to be humbled in a way that going to prison was it. Now, a big reason why I speak now is to tell my story, and hopefully there's somebody out there who is listening that doesn't have to go to my bottom. I always say to them, I said, I'm so grateful for having spent the 3 years in prison. I don't recommend it, but it was what I needed, and it allowed me to find that humility, some understanding, perspective, and it was the first time I'd ever been marginalized in my life. So that gave me a different mindset to look at people and empathize in a different way.
The E60 feature, I think, was something that really put your life in perspective. And was it weird to watch that and relive that, essentially? Because you would probably not had a chance to put it all back together again until you saw that piece, I'm guessing.
Well, sometimes as a drug addict, all you see is the negativity, right? No matter what. So it almost was inspiring a little bit to see that at a time I was a decent football player and I gave back in a different way as an athlete. And it was fun to see some of those things. Even in the NFL, being successful at times early in my career, I just look at my NFL career like it was just a wasted implosion, where there was good, fun times. I made relationships with men in that league that I had forgot about. So that inspired me a bit too. The part that was the most inspirational for most people, of course, was the climb out and what we're doing now to help people. And I thought that was showcased pretty well and did a great job because it's helped a lot of people.
You're a new dad.
Yeah.
You had a son by the name of MacGyver come to the world a couple of weeks ago. Now you're shaping a new life. After going through your life, how has that experience now changed you a little bit when you look forward to say, I'm now having an opportunity to raise a young man, and I've obviously learned a lot from what I've gone through.
I have a ton of life experience to share. I got a question last night around when will I share that type of thing, and it's going to be a discussion you have to have with your partner and understand when that's the best time. But nowadays, kids can Google you and have an understanding, or people start talking about your father. You have to have an understanding about what went on. So right now we're only worried about 2 a.m. feedings and changing diapers, and I've been assigned the burping part of it. I'm very good at that apparently with my big hands. So Anna hands them over to me to do that.
I know what that's all about too, and I appreciate that. Ryan, we'll take one more segment here and be back here with more with Ryan Leaf on Midco Sports Tonight. All right, back here with Ryan Leaf as we continue to chat about his visit here in Fargo. And I know you had an opportunity to meet a couple of the quarterbacks and the coaching staff from North Dakota State while you were in town a little bit. I know that you still enjoy that part of it. Was that fun? I'm guessing that experience talking with coaches and players, still you enjoy that a little bit.
Yeah, especially when it surrounds college football. I think that college football is still, to this day, the best sports out there. I can spend all day Saturdays watching college football. So, yeah, and then to sit in the film room and actually watch some film and talk about football, that's a little different that I've been doing for the past few years, and it's fun to get back into that.
Growing up in Montana, you knew all about Montana State. Your dad is actually born in Fargo, but was a Bobcat. Strange to come here and visit a place like North Dakota State and see all the national championship trophies and meet the coaches?
Not so much strange as just kind of you see the pride and tradition, I think. And the University of Montana has a bit of that in the state of Montana. Montana State did when I was growing up. They were winning the national championships in the 80s. 1984, I think, was their last national championship when I was 8 years old, and really remember that well. So it's neat to see the tradition continuing. It's neat to see the facilities in the Fargo Dome like this. So it's the first time for me. Usually I only see it on TV. So I enjoyed it.
Speaking of Bison quarterbacks, you had a chance to see one up and close a couple of weeks ago. Your first NFL game in 13 years that you attended. You're friends with Josh Duhamel, who's one of North Dakota's favorite sons. You had a chance to meet the governor and the first lady out there and watch Carson Wentz play. Describe that experience. What do you think of Carson Wentz?
Who knew it would be like this North Dakota, bombshell that came into play there for us. I knew I was coming out here to speak. I saw Josh come in the door. I hadn't seen him in a while. We live in L.A. together. He helps me out a ton. Has been a big supporter of mine. And I said, I'm going to speak in Fargo. And do you know the first lady and the governor? And he's like, they're right over there. And that's how it came about. And then the opportunity to watch Carson play, which, I've kept my eyes on him ever since since the draft. He was going to be the second pick in the draft like me, come from a small town, small state, and has done just a tremendous job of not only representing the school, the state, but he continues to get better week in and week out, and that's neat to see. His athletic ability is by far the advantage that he has. I think he's improved significantly week in, week out, and he's made Philadelphia a real contender this year.
And you talked about the off-the-field stuff, Ryan. That was the part where you really struggled with a lot of that. He seems to have handled that. What is the biggest challenge of the off-the-field stuff as an NFL quarterback, especially coming from a smaller state like Montana or North Dakota?
I'm pleasantly surprised by how he's handled himself. It really is. Being in a city like Philadelphia, the fact that he performed well last year and they won, I think, is a big thing. I think if they go 1-15, it's a different animal in itself. I think if he gets drafted by a different team, it may be a little different too. It's just the culture in some places are for winning programs, and he came from a winning culture here into a place where he's capable of winning there, and has done a great job. For me, I couldn't handle failure, and he seems to handle last year's kind of second half of the season swoon a bit with a lot of character and leadership, and it's on display this year.
College football, you've talked about, you're a huge fan. You want to go into college football, you want to be an analyst, and that's something that you're pursuing, right? That's in the future for you.
Yeah, luckily for me, I've developed relationships, which has allowed me to do it. I was a broadcast journalism major in college. The last place I wanted to be was in a newsroom after I retired, I felt. But now I'm just doing it later in life. I've got the opportunity this past year to shadow Joe Klatt for Fox, doing some neat things. They've signed a deal with the Big Ten, so they spend a lot more time out here in the Midwest. So I'm looking forward to that and doing that. My wife really gave me a lot of confidence, and we set it as a goal, and this is what we were going to try to accomplish, and actually be the one telling the story rather than the story being told about him, and I'm enjoying that a lot.
All right, so I'm going to put you on the spot. Who's in the college football playoff and who's winning it this year?
So I think two conferences are going to be left out this year. I think if it plays out the way I think it's going to play out, I think Alabama's 1, Penn State's 2, and then I'm going to put Georgia 3 because their only loss is going to be against Alabama in the SEC championship. And the committee's not going to want them to play again the next week and then make the 4th team Clemson. So those are my 4. I think the Big 12 and the Pac-12 get left out.
That's, wow. Bold, but you may be right as well. Ryan, we really appreciate you taking the time to do this. It's great to see you doing what you're doing, and really a pleasure to meet you. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right, Kelly, back to you.
All right, thank you, Brian. Leaf started a foundation called the Focused Intensity Foundation to provide financial assistance to those with addiction issues. Coming up after the break, the day is finally here. We preview the historic Minnesota at UND hockey rivalry before the puck drops tonight at 7:30. You don't want to miss this.